Hi, you're listening to Listed by Mina Kuper, 98.1 FM, 1220 AM. We're also on KHTS Hometown Station Facebook page, as well as the KHTS radio app. You can download it at the App Store, and I'm super excited. I've had such amazing guests on my show. I started my show when the lockdown happened because I felt that it was a good time to communicate and educate people around all these issues of dissolutions of relationships, whether they come in death, divorce, business dissolutions. They're usually complicated because there are many different things that come into place when you have to dissolve things and rearrange your life. Today, I have a very important guest, and I think he's important because I think he's amazing. I've gotten the time to know him and respect him very much as a human being, as an attorney. Dan Gold is a certified family law specialist by the State Bar of California Board and has been a partner at TLD Law since 2002. He concentrates on family law-related matters in Orange County and Los Angeles County, and he really is unique because he really can see through the lines when I say that he's out of the box, and sometimes things are not black and white. Dan, I want to thank you for being on my show today.
Oh, you're welcome, Mina. Thank you for having me on, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You know, it was interesting. Obviously divorce is a big issue, and it's, especially in community property states, they get a little hairier, I think. And I know you concentrate on gray, we talked about not the concentrate on gray divorces. You are a litigator, but you talk about gray divorce. And I found that fascinating because I've never heard about gray divorce. And it's so interesting.
It's a term that has really come about, I would think, the last 10 to 15 years. Studies have shown that since about 1990, so we're talking, 32 years ago? Is that right?
Yeah.
22 years ago? Yeah, 32 years ago. The rate among people over 50, the divorce rate, has doubled. And
amazing.
in most other age demographic categories, it hasn't quite seen that level of increase. You've actually seen some decreases.
So would you say baby boomers, right?
Yeah, probably baby boomers. Baby boomers go probably edging a little bit into what we call the Gen X, but primarily it's baby boomers. I would say, the numbers feel, and there's a lot of reasons that has happened, and the prediction right now is that the rate will triple within the next 8 years. So, and there's a lot of reasons for that, many of which are externally driven. This is an era, the age of people who are divorcing grew up in an era of no-fault divorce, which means you didn't necessarily need to prove fault or adultery or any of those grounds that were required prior to 1972. And so that made things a little bit easier. There's a evolution toward less stigma at divorce. And in many of these situations, people have waited until their children are now out of high school, adults, and they feel that the custody battles that it might have resulted if they ended their marriage while the children were small won't exist. So that's another thing. And people also evolve differently in relationships. When the marriage vows were first written many generations ago, many people got married in their teens, particularly women, young women, and their life expectancies weren't much above the age of 35. So you had a maybe 20-year time frame in which people were actually married. And the marriages were also much more of a business, a property relationship than about love. Now we have people getting married perhaps in their 20s and 30s, but living in some cases till their 70s or 80s. And just by the math I indicated, that's a double in the length of the marital time. And in that time, people evolve differently. Personalities evolve differently. People age differently. And sometimes they get so wrapped up in the day-to-day life of parents they forget to relate to each other. And by the time the children reach college age, they find they drifted apart. It's a common theme, but it's unique in each situation because people may drift apart for different reasons.
Right.
Some of which relates to typical what we call midlife crises situations, infidelity. Sometimes there's depression, mental breakdowns, cognitive breakdowns that happen, and as I said earlier, the pace of aging and how people interact with each other evolves over time, and some people evolve to the point where they realize or perhaps decide the third act of their lives would be better spent in a different relationship.
Right. And so true. It's interesting. I was talking to a gentleman that I know. I haven't spoken to him in a while. Other than, I think about a year and a half ago, he and his wife married 30 years. Perfect example. And he's like, oh, we're good. We're on good terms, And I spoke to him yesterday. He said, I can't believe she won't give me half of her pension. When you talk about the things you need to address in a marriage when you've been married so long. And she, it's community property stage, and they're arguing that he shouldn't get half the pension, although she acquired it during the marriage. And it's become more complicated because last time I spoke to him, they were all good, and then all of a sudden she got, somebody to really hammer in for some particular reason that he should not get the pension. And I know that when you deal with your clients and when we talk about people that have had a life already, you address their healthcare directives, long-term financial stability, businesses, assets, retirement funds, and pension funds, and that's a big deal. And it's funny because we were going to, knowing that I was going to be on the show with you today, that we had this call. I haven't spoken to him in months, which is so funny the way that happened. Maybe Siri's listening and called them or something. But right. It was really funny because I was like, I told him, I said, you're not going to believe this. I said, I'm going to have a call with an attorney. And he deals with this all the time. This is not unusual. In the 10th hour, I don't want you to have this. So what do you have to say about all this? I mean,
well, you brought up some good points and great when you have couples, matured couples, seasoned couples, as maybe I should call them,
yes.
that are ending their marriages or long-term relationships. There's a number of considerations that have to be made because although the folks may think they're going to live forever and want to live their free lives, they sometimes may not. And you may have situations happen where the divorce is started but doesn't finish because one of them passes away. Well, or they get seriously ill. Healthcare directives, estate plans, those are all impacted. A good attorney working through these issues needs to be aware of a lot of different specialty areas, whether it's tax, retirement division, or at least be able to point them in the direction of people who can help their clients in each of those specialized areas that come about when you deal with older couples getting divorced, because everyone goes through the same anxieties about life, the future, whether there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel, whether they're going to have some certainty or closure to their matter, and their quarterback, if you will, their lead counsel, the person who's helping them through this process, needs to have all those touchstones as part of their repertoire of resources for these clients who need that help.
Right. And that's what I like about you. You don't look to drag it out. I know. And I've heard in the past, because I sell real estate in divorce situations, so it's good to use a third party so that you stay neutral. And, the situation is that, they all of a sudden change their minds in the middle of arguing, and you don't drag it out. You really are very forthcoming, and you try to get them off the ledge and settle, because your cases, and I can't say that for all the attorneys because there's a lot to know, right? And each individual situation is so very different. But when I talk to you, you seem to have a handle on all your cases and know what's going on. And I find that unusual, but refreshing that it's not just a numbers game for you. You actually care about these people and who may be, lacking in mental capacity as far as making the right decision, not because they're incompetent, because maybe they're not as clever as the other person, right? Just born that way. And you realize that, and your approach towards these people are very nice, and you're not condescending to them.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I try very hard to at least fulfill that role, because really there's a two-pronged role here for the attorney that they hire. Traditionally, of course, the attorney is an advocate for their position in their matter, but they're also a counselor, and that's critical importance, because you need to step back and let the client know what really is going on. And I have found in my almost 3 decades of experience that it doesn't pay to hide the ball. It doesn't pay to shirk around details. Sometimes when you're starting out, you're afraid to give someone the bad news. Well, I'm not sure that ever stops, but you need to be able to deliver it in a manner that gives them some notion of why or why it happened and what's going to happen from there. And each case obviously has a different scenario in that. But at the end of the day, when someone comes into my office, number one, I already know they've made the decision. Probably their marriage is not going to be retrievable. There's not going to be reconcilable in any way, shape, or form. So that's one thing I know pretty sure. But I also know they have a problem, and that problem needs to be solved. And there's different manners in which to solve it. You can litigate, which is the traditional model that we learned in law school. But there's 2 other non-traditional models that people should be aware of as part of their process. And each matter may take some form of this in each individual situation. One is a collaborative model, in which 2 lawyers and 2 parties work together to find joint solutions. It's not quite like mediation, because lawyers are directly involved, but it is a process that is intended by its very name to collaborate and work toward a cooperative solution rather than going into an adversarial setting. So that's the sort of a hybrid approach between litigation and mediation. Mediation is where you have a facilitator. In my recommendation, that should be a practicing lawyer or retired judge, who sits down with the parties either with or without their lawyers, and essentially helps them work through a solution to the problem, to help them find the solution to the problem. And like I said, each individual couple may go through some stage of each of those strategies I just outlined. But at the end of the day, you got to look to your client and figure out a resolution strategy. And that's a two-way street. That's a two-way street. The lawyer provides the information, but the client has to also be empowered to help that counsel move their matter along by sort of taking control and ownership of their lives. And that usually requires legal counsel, to put the client in the proper perspective, whether it's recommending some degree of therapy, counseling, some type of class to help them sort of get a gauge of where they're at, so that they can more be in a position to really help their lawyer get through their matter. It's an empowering process for the client in many cases.
So in the state of California, is mediation a requirement before litigation?
It is only a requirement when you have situations where minor children are involved, and there's a mandatory mediation requirement where they will address solely the issue of the custody and visitation of the children. That's required. But with other issues, financial issues, property issues, the individual judges may, under local rules of court, require litigants, parties in the process, to meet and confer. That's kind of a broad, vague term that either is talking about lawyers talking, mediation, some capacity to resolve the matter before it gets to court. So there is I wouldn't call it a requirement per se, but it is mandated that the parties and or with or without their lawyers try to find a solution to the problem, even if the problem has to be solved by the judge, that the parties agree what the problem is and what information they're going to provide to the judge, evidence, if you will, to help prove their point, because it certainly saves a lot of time and energy.
Right, and they
in
just
front of
sign
the
off
judge.
on it. Yeah.
Right. And the judicial panels, the courtrooms are just too backlogged for people to waste resources arguing about things that they really should have solved before they stepped foot in the courtroom door.
Understood. Now, so can someone hire a private judge in lieu of a government official judge in the court system?
Here's what happens in that situation is the family law courts allow, through the California Constitution, has a provision that allows the parties and their lawyers to agree to have a retired judge, privately compensated by the parties, sit on their matter with the same legal authority and capacity as a judge sitting at any state courthouse in California.
That's great. I would think it speeds it up. It may be a little more expensive, but then you're in a sort of time period.
Both are true. I mean, it's expensive. It could speed it up. The key thing is the parties need to have an understanding of what and why they're going with a private judge, and also be comfortable with that judge's neutrality, impartiality, integrity, et cetera, and that both parties and their lawyers buy off on the notion that this judge is going to sit for whatever issues they decide to bring to that judge's, that retired judge's engagement.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful, because to have that option, I don't even think a lot of people know that they have that option. And I've mentioned it not too long ago to some people that I was chatting with, and they were able to afford it, but I think they couldn't wrap their head around that.
Well, I'll tell you one big benefit. It speeds it up, and it's not necessary. And basically, because most assigned judges in the state courthouse have other matters they have to hear. Yeah. And if you have a matter of any complexity and a matter involving substantial documentation, financial records, experts, any type of evidence that's that complicated requires many hours and days of testimony and evidence.
Oh, yeah. And then you may have to wait for the judge to hear you. That's a whole day potentially also.
Correct.
But Dan, I want to have you on again because I just love talking to you because I run into people all the time, especially when they know I handle, trust, probate, and divorce matters, dissolutions of relationships. And I know that I have someone I can refer to. And I want to let the audience know how to reach you. They know they can go call me or the station or go on Facebook or the app. But what's a good way for people to reach you?
They can email me at dgold@tldlaw.com. That's DGOLD at T as in Tom, L as in Larry, D as in David, law.com. That's probably the best way to get a hold of me, and then we can set them up for a consultation if they need one.
That's wonderful. I want to thank you for all you do and for caring about people. And you need to hit the road with them. You do what you need to do to take care of business in a fair way and get the job done. So I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to have a nice chat.
Yes. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Hi. Thanks for joining me again. You're listening to Listed by Mina Kuper. We're at 98.1 FM, 1220 AM. You could also listen to us on KHTS Hometown Station page on Facebook. If you don't use Facebook, you can download the KHTS radio app and find us there. So we are everywhere. And when it's there, stays there. And we're about real estate, trust, probate, divorce, dissolutions of relationships. I'm a realtor. I'm a certified trust and probate and divorce realtor working through California and Arizona. And I've been doing this for a long time. So I love to help people, guide them in the right direction because it's emotional, and Googling things usually may work a little bit, but you can't get the whole story because there's so many things that happen, and each situation is so unique that I love people to ask me questions. Even if you don't have a house and you need questions answered, I can help because I have a great database of professionals that I hold close and dear to me. It's super important to be guided. And I wish I had $1 for everyone that says to me, I wish I would have known you before. I feel sad for that, but happy because I explained certain things to them. But hopefully you can recommend us to who needs our help or contemplating or in the middle of something that needs attention. Today I'm really excited when someone I've gotten to know really well and really just adore him and his staff. Jose Tejada from Guaranteed Rate. He's the vice president of the mortgage lending. And Jose has got a really, really amazing background. Not only is he brilliant in finance, but his background lends himself, no pun intended, to being the mortgage person that he is. He's not just cookie cutter. He knows and can really find a solution most of the time that will work for people. Jose, I want to thank you so much for being on my show today.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you. It is an honor and a pleasure. And yes, I love always hanging out with you. And like you, I love to help people. So anything I can do.
Yeah. Yes. I know. So tell us your path, because you were in wealth management before. So tell us a little bit about how you got into mortgage lending. Because I've met some people that you've known for many, many years. Because how great is that? That tells a lot about you, that you have friends and attorneys that have known and worked with you for like at least 15 years. That says a lot about who you are as a person.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you and I kind of have been on a tour of meeting people, and you got the chance to meet some of my friends and collaborators.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been cool. I think it's been cool because you've seen different ones, right? Different age groups, different jobs.
He gets along with really from people are hip and cool and, professionals, attorneys, Harvard graduates to people that are seniors that are still rocking out, and doing their work, and such a wide range. I love it. It's like, I can't wait to see who we go to lunch with next. And it's like really, really fun to meet all these wonderful, intelligent people who have been, they are aboard.
They are characters in their own right, but they're all very good people. They have that in common. Yes. They're very smart people and they're very good people.
What I like is they're authentic. Yes.
They are, just like you.
Yes.
Which I think one of the reasons you and I kind of clicked.
If you're going to ask me something, I'll let you know.
Yeah. In fact, we had an awesome first meeting. I think that's kind of what started solidifying our friendship.
Funny, right. Uh-huh.
And so, so I started 22 years ago in the world of finance. I'm kind of in my third sort of iteration of a job in finance. But the way I started is I started as a teller when I was going to college at Cal State Northridge. And I was, frankly, a terrible teller. I was such a bad teller. And I would sometimes be over on my drawer and sometimes I'd be short on my drawer. So it's like I was sometimes, robbing people and sometimes giving people money back. It was a weird thing.
Funny.
But I had a manager at the time. His name was Eli, and I'll never forget him because he kind of kick-started my career in terms of lending and actual finance because, he comes to me and he goes, I think it was like 6 months into the job, and he's like, you're a bad teller. And I was like, I am a bad teller. I'm a bad teller.
Really they give you dirty money, sticky or something, trying to get the bills.
Well, the thing was, I was so engaged in talking to people, right? And he's like, I see you're good at talking to people. You're able to sell credit cards really well because back then we would sell credit cards over the counter, right? And so he says, would you just want to try sitting on the platform, sitting on the sell side and see what you can do? And so at about 21 years of age, I wrote my first loan, and I started doing equity lines and personal loans and small business loans. And then the journey within Washington Mutual, which doesn't exist anymore, ended up being that I left there in 2008 after it got basically destroyed during that recession, and I left as a branch manager. I was managing 2 offices, one in Agora Hills and one in Reseda, and then I left that. and I went over to a company called Union Bank. And it was funny because now Union Bank is getting sold to U.S. Bank. It'll be U.S. Bank in about a month and a half. So I joke, right, and I tell people, give me 10 years and I'll kill a bank. It's,
what do they say? They pass the buck, right, to someone else.
Yeah. So I ended up but it was a blessing. I went to Union Bank and I started working in their private banking division, and that's where I really learned real, true lending. And I started getting into commercial lending and SBA lending, and then really complex business lending, and of course complex luxury mortgage. And as well as getting my investment licenses. I had at one point a Series 6, 63, and 65, an insurance license, and today I only hold the Series 65. In 2019, it starts my last chapter, my current chapter, where I leave the company and then I go start out in just mortgage lending, predominantly mortgage lending. And so I went kind of through the broker channel for a little bit before landing at a guarantee rate in February of 2020, just before the crash, the first pandemic crash.
Right, the first one.
And then of course the fire hydrant of business that came with the lower rates. And so and I've been happily in the Beverly Hills office there. I am a resident of the West San Fernando Valley, proudly of the great 818. I live in West Hills with my lovely wife and my two young daughters.
That's amazing. That's great. And so let's get into the nuts and bolts of today.
Sure.
So I know you sent me an article today, and Jose is always up on everything. I haven't listened to it yet. It's a audio, because we were talking when we were having lunch about where we think everything is going, right?
Yeah.
Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. The Feds always play around with the rates. So what's your take on this? Where do you think, kind of, sort of, what's going to happen?
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. I think that your clients that are looking to buy a home, or any client or any person that's looking to buy a home, will have the largest opportunity to get into the home of their dreams from between now and the middle of January. This is going to be the best time to get into a home. And it's funny, I subscribe to economists that only, give their feedback to people that pay for those services, as well as I listen to many public economists as well. And they're all kind of saying the same thing, which I'm going to try to bullet point and summarize for you right now. And so the idea is this. And then it's funny, one of them said, this is the market you wanted, whether you believe it or not, right? That was one of the headlines. And here's what that means. It means that over the next 3 months, there are going to be three things that are going to take a lot of buyers out of the market. Obviously, the number one thing is that interest rates are higher. I think Freddie Mac came out today saying that the average rate was at about 7% today. Okay.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, so fine. That takes X amount of people that no longer qualify out of the market or no longer feel like they want to pay a 7% rate. Okay. Then the second thing is that we're entering in the holiday season where, as you know, cyclically, naturally in our business, less people are motivated to buy, right? You got the kids at home, you got the holidays, you're spending time with family, maybe you're traveling. For whatever X reason, every year it's going to slow down around the holiday season.
Yeah.
And the third thing is anxiety and the lack of the consumer having understanding of what is actually happening in the market. We used to call them in wealth management, we used to call them weapons of mass distraction, right? And these are these headlines these are these headlines that are super alarming, right? Like the sky is falling, right? All day. Yeah. So, but they're not really reading into what's going on. So what's actually going on? So, for example, one of the things that you saw on my socials probably today was that I was talking about inventory. Okay, there were in September there were 732,000. Don't quote me exactly, in that range, homes available for sale in the United States of America. 41 of those, though, were already under 41% of those were already under contract. So there was really less than 732,000 available homes, because almost half of that was already under contract, right?
Right.
Okay, so what does that mean? That means that when you're hearing, the inventory is going up, it's not. There's still a lack of inventory in comparison to the demand of people that want or need housing. If you look at 2019, in June 2019, the number was 1.2 million with 25% under contract, right?
Right.
So there was much more inventory in 2019, right, than there was today.
Yeah.
It's there's going to be naturally more inventory because of the three things that I just said, but it's not an alarming rate. It's not something that's like so many houses like it was in 2008 for sale and nobody wants to buy. That's not the case. So now let's talk about interest rates. So now we have the Fed is battling inflation, right? When inflation comes down, mortgage rates come down. A misconception that the consumer has is that the federal rate will impact your mortgage rate. It does not. It has nothing to do with your mortgage rate, okay? What your federal rate impacts is consumer debt. What is consumer debt? Credit card bills, credit card interest rates, auto loans, personal loans, home equity lines of credits. These are the things that are tied to the prime rate, which is what the Fed is impacting, right? Why is the Fed impacting that? Inflation is the idea of too few goods, not enough goods being chased by too many people, thus making those goods more expensive, right? So in order to control that, the Fed raises the rate on your credit cards, on your auto loans, on your personal loans to kind of encourage Mina to not spend more money, right? Yeah. In other words, keep more money with themselves and not put more money in the economy. Because if there's less money in the economy, then there's there's more goods that can be available to be bought. Okay? Now, the Fed's been fighting this for a few months now, right? That's one issue. If the Fed wins, they're intending to win, they will win. Eventually, this is going to happen. It will impact inflation. It will come down. That's one thing that's happening towards controlling inflation. The other thing is the supply chain. The supply chain created a lot of issue with inflation over the last 2 years because goods were not moving across the world, right? That is largely resolved today, largely resolved. So that is not no longer not an issue, not necessarily now, but is consistently getting better. That means more supplies come on. And what do you have? You have companies like, for example, Nike saying we have an oversupply of shoes. What do you do when you have too many shoes? You lower the price, right? Yeah. Which in turn means you're lowering inflation, right? So I agree with the economists that this is kind of what you're going to see in the link that I sent you, Mina, that the Fed has already done enough to impact inflation. It's just in a delay time set. We think that the supply chain issue is repairing itself almost to a full range, which is going to also help inflation. And we think that period is about 3 months. It's about mid-January, inflation comes down, and immediately with that, mortgage rates come down. So what happens when that happens? You're going to get not only the normal flow of buyers, because we talked about not having enough inventory for the demand of buyers, buyers that want to buy homes. What happens is you get all these buyers come back into the market, plus you get investors coming back into the market, creating more competition. Yeah. So you get where that goes.
Right. And, it's like anything. It's an opportunity as well because what goes up must come down. And historically, California is a very high-priced state because people want to live here. I know a lot of people moved out and all, but a lot of people moved in. Depends where you're coming from.
I joke with you, right? All roads will go west eventually.
Yeah, they'll go west. People always come here. Just go west. No, just go west, right? But, California will always have the weather it has, right? I mean, there's no place, I don't think any state that has this kind of weather, right? And so it's so desirable. That's probably a big hub, and it's cosmopolitan, and there's a lot of business and activity here. It's not a sleepy town. And, it's an opportunity for people to do real estate well.
As an economy, there was a big announcement, right? That California surpassed what economy? We're like number 6 or something in the world now?
Yeah.
So it's, it is always going to be, California is always going to be happening. There's always going to be migration into California.
Yeah, and, this is an opportunity for people to acquire real estate wealth.
Yeah,
absolutely. Buy, right? I mean, this is when the music happens. Not when it's, 2% was great. It got a lot of young couples into their homes. It got people refinanced and get some cash out. But now, when the interest rates go up, historically, the prices go down. And this is where people who have some cash and good credit will go in and buy things.
So let me talk about a couple of things that are happening. even for people that don't have cash, let me tell you some things that can happen. And I just pulled up the article, by the way. It was the Washington Post. California is poised to overtake Germany as the world's #4 economy. So, I mean, that's incredible. So here's what happens. Why do I say the opportunity is between now and the next 3 months? So I told you why there's not going to be so many buyers. So if you're a buyer and you're qualified, you can negotiate very aggressively in any house that you like. And because the sellers are having a hard time moving property, they're going to be much more willing to do deals where they give you a seller credit that you can then use to buy down rates.
Right.
Or they might give you a long escrow that will allow you to sell your house, right? Like, say you're living in a condo, you want to upgrade to a single family. They might be okay taking a deal allowing you to sell your house before you move into their house, right? A contingent,
Hold that thought, because we're going to take a break, and I'm going to bring you back. There's that whole buying the points down. So we're going to take we're going to take a break and be back.
Yeah. No worries.
Thanks for joining us again. You're listening to Hosted by Mina Kuper, 98.1 FM and 1220 AM KHTS Hometown Station page on Facebook. And we were just talking about the rates and buy downs. That's the big thing now. And Jose Tejada from Guaranteed Rate Mortgage, he's vice president there, and he was telling us, because that's an interesting, creative way to help the whole buy-sell process. Can you go a little more into detail about that, Jose? We were talking and we had to go on break.
Yeah, so we're talking about the idea that sellers are more motivated to help buyers get into the home. So there's a couple of ways that it can be done. One is if they're giving you a credit, you can take that credit and you can buy down your rate with the credit that the seller gives you, or you can do what's called a 2-1 buy down, for example. And this is where the seller, instead of reducing the price, is going to give of the home, might give you a credit that will allow you to have a rate lower for the first year by 2%, and then for the following year by 1%, right? So you still qualify at the full rate. So say the rate was 6.5%. You would still qualify at 6.5%, but the first year you would only be paying 4.5% on that note.
That's amazing.
And guess what? By next year, right, if I'm right, God willing, if I'm right, the rates are going to be lower next year. You refinance out of that deal, you get into a permanent lower rate. Right. And voila, guess what? You negotiated, you got under the market, you did well, you got into the home of your dreams with less competition, and you made a wonderful financial deal. And my team and I are always happy to have these conversations and be able to walk borrowers through that.
Which I think is great because, some people may just want to stay in their house for 2 years and then upgrade or downsize, right? And what a great opportunity to still get a really low rate. And I think that a lot of people have no idea about this. And up to what loan amount can you do this? Is there a threshold?
There are not a lot of options on the jumbo loan amounts. So in LA County, it's going to be, right about the 900,000 and below level. But, a lot of opportunities still for the majority of neighborhoods.
Well, yeah. I mean, there are houses, 700, 600, and those include townhomes, condos.
And by the way, this is the loan amount, not the purchase price. So we're talking about the loan amount.
Right. The loan amount, right. So you're still, that's still doable. Because a lot of properties that are 900 and less,
and for the realtors that are in the audience, if you don't know how to do this, if you don't know how to have this conversation with your seller, if you have a property that's stagnant, let us know, and then we can help you with that conversation.
How amazing! I'm gonna push this out to my office, and I know they're listening to us at Keller Williams because this is certainly a way to let people know you can still buy something, and still get in a decent situation. And what's nice is, 2 years later, there could be other products that came out too, because products are always rolling out because people want to lend money. And especially in a low-risk state like California where it's very desirable, always will be. They want investors that buy these mortgages want to put their money here, as long as people qualify and they can pay for it, they want to put their money here. And, it's a beautiful thing because, real estate wealth and buying, look at the rents. They're outrageous.
Yeah.
I mean, the rents are just so outrageous.
And so one thing I wanted to touch on, and I know we don't have time today, but maybe we'll have another opportunity, is that another opportunity that's rising a lot right now is renovation loans. For example, we're working on a deal right now in Oakland where the property, if it was lendable at market, would be worth about $350,000, but we're getting into contract at $290,000. And guess what? We're doing a renovation loan where they can do anything other than buy furniture on the deal. They can put solar panels, they can put Tesla on it, energy, they can do landscaping, they can rebuild a house completely. And guess what? They're gonna get the after repair value for that loan. They're not going to be subject to what it's worth today. They're going to get a loan based on what it's going to be worth in the future once we have that contractor bid. So that is allowing realtors that have property that maybe an investor isn't willing to buy right now, or if the investor is lowballing them, right? Say they're offering on that property in Oakland $250,000. Guess what? That realtor can still sell that property for its seller at a higher price, leveraging leveraging a renovation loan.
Love it. And I know you're licensed in other states as well, which is really cool because I'm licensed in Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. We both are.
Yeah. So Jose Tejada, what is a good way for people to reach you? They can always reach me, but what's a good way to directly reach you?
Yeah, my webpage is www.rate.com/Jose Tejada, HJOSETEJADA. My email is Jose, Jose.Tejada, TEJADA @rate.com. And if you want to just text me, you can text me at 818-642-2198.
Thank you so much. And I love this stuff because, I'm a critical thinker and I like to kind of get in there, and that's why I do what I do, right? And this is so cool because it's exciting. People are like, oh my God, the interest rates, but they don't know the whole story, right?
Take down. Mass distraction. Weapons of mass distraction.
That's right. They don't know the whole story. What's possible. So I want to thank you again. I look forward to meeting more of your friends. I'll introduce you to some of mine. I mean, these people are brilliant. The people are very highly educated and know their things. So thank you to Jose, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Have a great rest of the day.